Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because, well, you're curious, right? You want to learn and you like getting the real story fast.
Exactly. And today, we are plunging into one of the big ones, the Flying Dutchman.
Probably the most iconic ghost ship legend there is. It's sailed through imaginations for, what, centuries?
Easily. So our mission today, if you will, is to kind of unpack this whole legend. Where did it actually start?
Right, the origins. And what about those sightings people always talk about? Were they real?
We'll get into that. And are there, logical explanations? What does science say?
And of course, how did this ghostly sailor and his ship end up everywhere? In culture, I mean.
For sure. And just so you know, we're drawing heavily from the big Wikipedia page on the Flying Dutchman. It's a great resource for this stuff.
Perfect. So consider this your quick way to get up to speed on everything Flying Dutchman. We're going from its likely roots back in the 17th century.
The Dutch Golden Age, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing time for their maritime power. The Dutch East India Company.
All the way to, like, SpongeBob and Formula One nicknames today. It's wild.
It really is. There are more twists in this than you might think.
Okay, so where does a massive legend like this actually begin? What's the spark?
Well, the strongest clues, they really point back to the 17th century, like you said. This was the absolute peak for the Dutch East India Company, the VOC.
DOC, right. Heard of them.
And Dutch ships were just dominant everywhere. But it wasn't just the number of ships. The VOC itself was kind of revolutionary.
How so?
Think of it as the world's first real multinational corporation, a giant connecting Europe to Asia, dealing in spices, goods.
Yeah.
Huge, huge enterprise.
Okay, massive scale. But
Yeah.
how does that connect to a ghost ship? Seems like a leap.
Well, think about it. With this huge company sending ships on these incredibly long, dangerous voyages.
Yeah, people back home must have been constantly worried.
Exactly. That widespread anxiety about loved ones lost at sea, combined with a world where, folklore and superstition were just part of life, it created this, perfect storm for stories. Tales of lost ships, maybe gradually becoming more supernatural. The sea was dangerous, so ghost stories felt perhaps natural.
That makes sense. The ocean brings fortune, but also takes lives. So when do we first see this specific ship, the Dutchman, written down?
The first concrete mentions pop up, late 18th century. Around 1790, there's a book, John Macdonald's Travels.
Okay.
And he talks about this common sailor story, a Dutch ship, terrible storm near the Cape of Good Hope. Classic setting.
The Cape. Yeah. Always heard it was rough.
Oh, notoriously so.
Yeah.
Anyway, this ship, it couldn't find a pilot, gets lost. But the spooky part, its ghostly image supposedly reappears.
Don't tell me. Only in bad weather.
You got it. Only when storms rage. A ship forever fighting its last battle.
Wow. That's a pertinent image. And the Cape of Good Hope. Way there. Just the bad weather.
Mostly that, yeah. Its reputation for treacherous seas, crazy weather, strong currents. It just became this magnet for maritime fears. And ghost stories, too.
Makes sense.
Then, just a few years later, maybe 1795, there's another book, A Voyage to Botany Bay, sometimes credited to George Barrington.
Right.
It tells of a Dutch warship lost off the Cape, but another ship sailing with it survived.
Okay.
And later, some survivors claimed they saw a ship bearing down on them full sail. One guy even said, "That's the ship we lost."
No way. Was it?
Turned out to be just a dark cloud. But this incident apparently is what got English sailors calling these apparitions the Flying Dutchman.
Huh. So at first it's more about misidentification, fear, maybe trauma, making people see things. Not necessarily a curse yet.
Pretty much. But the story wasn't finished cooking.
Yeah.
It kept evolving. The whole punishment for a crime angle comes in later, early 19th century.
Okay. Getting darker now.
Yeah, John Leyden, 1803, Scenes of Infancy. He writes about this common sailor belief in a ghost ship way down south off Africa.
A bad omen.
Exactly. Harbinger of storms.
Mhm.
And his version says the crew did something awful way back when sailing began, got hit by plague, and now they're doomed to just sail forever.
Right. Divine justice. That's much more of a classic ghost story. More compelling, too.
Totally. And the details kept shifting. 1804, Thomas More writes a poem, moves the ship to the North Atlantic,
North Atlantic. Okay.
and adds this weird detail. It sails super fast, even when there's no wind at all. Then, around 1812, Sir Walter Scott chimes in. In notes for his poem, Rokeby, he's the first to call it a pirate ship.
A pirate ship full of treasure.
Loaded with gold, yeah.
Yeah.
And seeing it, the absolute worst luck for any sailor.
Okay, so now it's a pirate ghost ship carrying cursed treasure. That's quite an upgrade. It's amazing how bits get added over time.
It really is, like building blocks. And what's really interesting is there might have been a real person who inspired the captain character.
Oh. Hmm.
Well, some people think it could be based on Bernard Folk, 17th century Dutch captain.
What was his story?
He was famous for making insanely fast trips between Holland and Java. So fast.
That people thought he had help.
Exactly. Whispers started that he must have made a deal with the devil. Too fast to be natural, you know.
Huh. The old deal with the devil explanation for talent. Classic. So we have all these pieces floating around. When does it become the full story we mostly know?
The big moment seems to be 1821, an article in Blackwood's Edinburgh magazine.
Okay, what did that one establish?
It really nails down the setting, Cape of Good Hope, and gives us the captain's name, Hendrik van der Decken.
Van der Decken, got it.
And this is where we get those key motifs, like the ghostly crew trying to pass letters to other ships.
Letters? To who?
To people long dead. And accepting those letters supposedly brings terrible luck.
Oh, that's chilling. Don't take the ghost mail.
Right. And most importantly, this version gives us the captain's famous oath, his defiant vow to round the Cape.
Even if it took forever.
Even if it took until Judgment Day. That's the core of the curse.
What were his exact words? Do we know?
The article quotes him saying something like, "May I be eternally damned if I do, though I should beat about here till the day of judgment."
Wow. Talk about stubborn. Challenging fate or God or the ocean itself.
Pretty much. That clash of human will against nature or the divine is central. And this 1821 story also cements the idea that the ship is almost always seen in really foul weather.
Making it even more ominous. Okay, so the legend is pretty much fully formed by the 1820s. Lost ship, cursed captain, bad weather sightings. But what about actual reports? Have people claimed to see it since then?
Oh, definitely. There are numerous reports from the 19th and 20th centuries. These sightings are a big part of why the legend stuck around.
Any famous ones?
Probably the most famous involves royalty, actually. Prince George of Wales, the future King George V.
A king saw the Flying Dutchman. Seriously?
Well, a prince at the time. It was 1881. He was on a naval voyage near Australia, early morning, July 11th.
Okay, what did they see?
The ship's log, or the version we have, talks about a strange red light as of a phantom ship all aglow.
All aglow. Creepy.
And
yeah.
within this glow, they could apparently see the masts, spars, sails of a brig. Looked like it passed pretty close, maybe 200 yards off.
And how many people saw it?
The log mentions 13 people. The officer of the watch, a midshipman, others.
13 people,
Yeah.
including the future king. That's hard to ignore. Did they find anything?
Nope. Searched the area, nothing. And the weather was clear, sea was calm, apparently.
Huh. Clear weather. That contradicts the usual story.
It does, which is interesting. Adds another layer of mystery. But there's a grim follow-up to that sighting.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
Later that same morning, the sailor who first reported seeing the phantom ship, he fell from the foretopmast.
No, no.
Yeah, he died. And you can imagine, for the crew, that just cemented the idea. See the Dutchman, doom follows. Pure coincidence, most likely, but...
But incredibly powerful superstition fuel. Chilling. Any other notable accounts?
Well, Nicholas Montserrat, who wrote The Cruel Sea, fantastic book,
Yeah.
he referenced the legend in his last unfinished novel, Master Mariner. He connected the Dutchman to the myth of the wandering Jew, suggesting this deeper theme of endless wandering, maritime folklore runs deep.
Interesting connection. So we have these compelling stories, some from high-profile witnesses. But you mentioned science earlier. Are there, non-ghostly explanations?
Oh, absolutely. For those of us looking for a more down-to-earth answer, the most likely explanation involves optical illusions, atmospheric tricks of the light.
Like mirages.
Exactly. Specifically, something called a superior mirage, and a related, more complex version called Fata Morgana.
Okay, break that down. How does air make you see a ghost ship?
Well, it happens under certain weather conditions. Usually when you have a layer of warm air sitting on top of colder air near the sea surface.
Like an inversion.
Precisely. This boundary between the air layers acts like a lens. It bends the light coming from a real ship that's actually way over the horizon, maybe too far to see directly.
So the light gets bent upwards.
Right. And it creates an image of that distant ship floating in the air above the horizon. Looks like a phantom ship, but it's just a reflection, sort of.
So it's a real ship, just its image is projected somewhere else. Upside down, maybe.
Often upside down, yeah. That's a key feature of superior mirages. There's a great story in a book called Roundabout Rambles by Frank R. Stockton.
What's the story?
A captain explains to his freaked-out crew that the phantom ship they saw was just the reflection of a real ship way below the horizon.
Did they believe him?
Well, he apparently even predicted seeing a reverse mirage of an incoming steamship, and then, sure enough, the real steamship eventually appeared.
Huh. Now that's a captain who knew his physics. Must have calmed him down.
You'd hope so. There's also another effect called looming. Light bending over the Earth's curve can make ships just below the horizon appear lifted up, higher than they are.
So combine looming with mirages.
And you get very convincing reasons why people might genuinely believe they saw a ghostly ship doing impossible things. Science can be pretty cool at explaining spooky stuff.
It really can. But okay, even with scientific explanations, the idea of the Flying Dutchman clearly took hold. Its cultural impact is just massive.
Oh, enormous. It sailed into pretty much every art form imaginable. Let's start with literature.
Right. Coleridge, Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
Exactly. Written back in the 1790s, it has that incredibly vivid ghost ship scene. Many think Coleridge was definitely inspired by early Dutchman tales. Thematic links are undeniable.
Yeah, the skeletal crew.
Yeah.
Very Dutchman-esque.
Yeah.
What else in books?
Tons. An early short story from 1821, Vanderdecken's Message Home, about enduring love. A poem by John Boyle O'Reilly in 1867. He wrote it while being transported to Australia as a convict.
Wow.
Dutch poet J. Slauerhoff wrote about it in the 1920s. More recently, Ward Moore's 1951 novel used it as a metaphor for an automated bomber.
Sci-fi Dutchman. Okay.
Brian Jacques, the Redwall author, did a whole young adult fantasy trilogy called Castaways of the Flying Dutchman.
Right. I think I've heard of that.
And for something funny, Tom Holt's Flying Dutch has the crew as immortals who can only visit land for short bursts.
So from epic poems to YA fantasy to comedy, it's incredibly versatile. What about the stage? Opera.
Yeah,
theater.
definitely. An English melodrama popped up in 1826, The Flying Dutchman, or The Phantom Ship. The writer even said he got the idea from that Blackwoods magazine article.
Ah, the one that named Vanderdecken.
Yep. But the big one, the most famous, is Wagner. Richard Wagner's opera, Der Fliegende Holländer, The Flying Dutchman, premiered 1843.
Wagner. Huge. What did he add to the story?
He got the idea partly from Heinrich Heine, a writer who introduced this key plot point. The Dutchman can be saved.
Saved how?
Through the true, faithful love of a woman.
Yeah.
And he gets to come ashore once every 7 years to search for her.
The 7-year shore leave. And the redemption through love. That's pure opera. Where did Wagner set it?
Originally, off Scotland, apparently. But he later changed it to the Norwegian coast.
Iconic music, iconic story. Any other operas tackle it?
There was one, actually, by Pierre-Louis Deitch called Le Vaisseau Fantôme, The Phantom Ship. It came out in Paris in 1842, a year before Wagner's.
Really? Was it similar?
It drew on Walter Scott and other sources. There's some debate about whether Wagner knew it or was influenced by it. Similar themes, maybe, but hard to say for sure.
Interesting footnote. Any modern plays?
Amiri Baraka's 1964 play Dutchman is powerful. It uses the legend symbolically, exploring themes of entrapment and race relations in America.
So concert halls, theaters. What about paintings? It seems like such a visual legend.
Oh, for sure. Artists loved it. Albert Ryder, an American painter, did several moody, evocative paintings of the Dutchman. You can see them at the Smithsonian.
Cool.
And Howard Pyle, famous for his pirate pictures, also did a dramatic Flying Dutchman painting. That one's in Delaware.
I can picture them. Dark, stormy seas, glowing ship.
Yeah.
Okay, moving to screens. TV and movies. Got to be loads.
Absolutely loads. Back in the 50s, a show called The Buccaneers had a ghost ship called the Dutchman, but it turned out to be pirates faking it.
Huh. Clever pirates.
The Twilight Zone, of course, touched on it. Judgment Night has a U-boat captain reliving a sinking over and over very Dutchman-like curse, and mentions in other episodes, too.
Naturally.
Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea had an episode. Even a 1967 Spider-Man cartoon had Mysterio create a Flying Dutchman illusion.
Mysterio. Of course he did. What about more recently?
Well, there's the big one. SpongeBob SquarePants.
Right. The green ghostly pirate.
The Flying Dutchman.
Yep.
He's a recurring character, shows how mainstream the legend is. And in anime, One Piece has an undersea version, captained by Vanderdecken descendants.
SpongeBob and anime. It really gets everywhere. And films. I'm guessing pirates feature heavily.
You know it. The Pirates of the Caribbean movies. The Flying Dutchman is Davy Jones's ship, right?
And then Will Turner's.
Exactly. They borrow heavily from the Wagner opera element, the curse, the love angle, though they play fast and loose with the rules sometimes.
Definitely brought the legend to a massive new audience. Did they put it in games too?
Yep. Disney Infinity Kingdom Hearts the Third, Sea of Thieves.
Hmm.
The ship pops up in gaming.
And outside of Disney, any other notable films?
There was a cool 1951 film noir, Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. Ava Gardner, James Mason.
Oh, how did that interpret it?
In that one, the Dutchman is actually the man, Hendrik van der Decken, cursed to wander the earth, only allowed ashore for 6 months every 7 years to find a woman willing to die for him.
A different take on the curse and redemption.
Uh-huh.
Interesting. What about music besides Wagner?
Loads. Back in '49, Hugo Winterhalter did a sea shanty-style recording. More recently, a Dutch metal band, Karak Angren, did a whole concept album about it.
Metal Dutchman. Nice.
It's mentioned in songs by Tin Machine, that was David Bowie's band, the Jolly Rogers, Tori Amos, Jethro Tull. It resonates across genres.
From shanties to metal to rock. Okay. Any other weird places it pops up?
Radio drama BBC did one in 2003.
Mm.
And, get this, an amusement park.
A Flying Dutchman ride.
In the Netherlands, yeah. Efteling Park has a roller coaster called De Vliegende Hollander. Part water coaster, part dark ride. Tells a story about Captain Willem van der Decken.
That sounds amazing, actually. A coaster themed around eternal damnation at sea.
Right. And even, like, real-world stuff. KLM, the Dutch airline.
Yeah.
They paint the Flying Dutchman on the side of some of their planes.
That's kind of cool. Embracing the legend.
And sailing. There's actually a class of racing dinghy, a 2-person boat, called the Flying Dutchman.
Seriously. A racing boat.
Yep. High performance. It was even an Olympic class for over 30 years from 1960.
Wow. From ghost ship to Olympic sailboat. That's quite a journey. And
Yeah.
people get nicknamed that too, right?
Oh, yeah. Lots. Usually Dutch people known for speed or skill. Anthony Fokker, the airplane designer. Honus Wagner, the baseball player, though he was German-American, his nickname stuck.
Who else?
Robin Van Persie, the footballer. The rock band Golden Earring. Max Verstappen, Formula One driver.
All Flying Dutchmen. Even a racehorse back in the day, apparently.
It's incredible how the name itself became shorthand for speed, mystery, maybe a bit of daring.
It really is. It connects to so many other concepts too, doesn't it? Like Davy Jones's Locker, other ghost stories like the Mary Celeste.
The Wandering Jew, the Wild Hunt,
Yeah.
these big archetypal myths of endless journeys and spectral figures.
Well, this has been quite the voyage through the legend. We started way back with the Dutch East India Company.
Traced how the story grew, adding curses, pirates, defying captains.
Looked at those eerie sightings, the royal encounter.
And then the science, the mirages, the optical tricks that might explain them.
And finally, just how deep it's seeped into culture. Books, opera, movies, SpongeBob, roller coasters.
It's amazing. From a sailor's yarn, possibly born of fear and bad weather off the Cape centuries ago, to something instantly recognizable today.
So the final thought to leave you, the listener, with, why? Why has this ghost ship story endured so powerfully? We understand mirages now. We have GPS, satellites. The sea isn't quite the vast unknown it once was.
Right. So what is it about the Flying Dutchman that still grabs us? What deep human fears or maybe fascinations about defiance, fate, the sea, eternity does this tale still tap into?
Something to ponder. Until our next deep dive, keep exploring.